Hello everybody! Right now I wanted to show you Google Sheets, which is a great program that you can use in the classroom to analyze data, have your students analyze data. So I'm going to be showing you a few different ways to analyze data, some suggestions, and why I think Google Sheets is a great tool to use in the classroom. So some different ways. Right here we see just some x and y coordinates, some simple numbers to plot. This would be like a common math if you're like in an algebra course and students are learning how to plot points. This might be an interesting thing to look at and show students the basics of how to use Excel. So if you want to make a graph out of some simple coordinates like this, you would go to Insert and then Chart. And then you can see here a graph automatically pops up. Alright, so it shows you a nice line graph here. But you can also look and you see there's some other different options, and so you might say, hey, I don't want to see this as a line graph, actually I just want to plot the points. And so that's an option. You can always, of course, change the names of your axes, so you might want to say, oh, I don't want this to be X, I want this to be the year, or whatever, anything that might be on an X-axis. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can graph data, and ways to edit the graphs to, give you something to analyze, show the data in a way that students can analyze it, examine trends, and see what's going on. So this is kind of the basics of how to analyze data, but I also wanted to show a real data set. So this is a real data set that I pulled online, and it gives the data collected for over many, many years of carbon dioxide concentrations. And so this real data, very easy to share with students using something like Google Sheets because, all you have to do is grab a link and then you can post the link to Google Classroom or whatever place students have access to, and they can easily hop on, make their own copy of the data, or you can make a copy of the data for them. Very easy to share with students, and it's also easy for them to interact with each other on a Google Sheets, right? If they are opened up the same document, they can work on it simultaneously. So very easy sharing privileges there. And so once you've shared the data with your students, then they can take the time to analyze the data themselves. So this data, lots of numbers here, kind of impossible to really wrap your head around without creating a visual to look at it. So students can select the data, and then they can do that exact same thing. So insert a chart. And so now here you can see what a graph would look like of the concentration of carbon dioxide over time. And so already this graph is looking really good. The years on the x-axis and the carbon dioxide concentrations on the y-axis. So that's already good. If you wanted to trick students, I think that if you put the carbon dioxide concentrations on the left, then it would show up the other way, and so that can kind of be a way to make sure that they are switching the axes and know how to do that. But anyways, so looking at this graph, it looks pretty good. One thing that I noticed that might be a good thing to change is the axis here. So it looks like, there's a good bit of space here that has nothing in it. And so if you scale down the axis a little bit, maybe start it at a min of 200, it allows you to see the trend a little bit better. And so students can really play around with making these graphs and analyzing them, and you can have students, go on their own and try to make their graphs and see what students come up with, and maybe have a class discussion on which graph seems to be the best way to plot the data, or why do they think that. And so there's a lot of good opportunities here for data analysis. The graphs are kind of my favorite way to analyze data with Google Sheets. And one thing also about the graphs is that it's super easy to copy and paste these into other resources. So especially like if you want to have students make a presentation, like maybe even a lab presentation, it's very easy for them to just copy and paste this into a Google Slides. And then from the Google Slides, if they notice something while they're working on the Google Slides that they want to change on their graph, even if it's just something as simple as the color scheme, it'll be linked right directly back into the Google Sheets, and so they can easily go back, edit it, and it'll upload automatically onto their Google Slides. So, Google products obviously work well together. And so that's another great benefit of using Google Sheets. All right, and so we'll look at just a couple other ways that you can look at data. So here's some fake test scores for students. So you've got student A, student B, C, D, E, F, G, and then their test scores for 3 different imaginary tests. And so some cool things that you can do with number analysis is that if you select, so let's select all the test 1 scores for all of the different students, you can, if you go to function under insert, you can go and you can find the averages of these. And then you can look and you can say, oh, students got an average of 85.4% for their test 1. Or you can look at, just student A and you can say, oh, student A, what's their average in the course now after these 3 tests? And you can look and average it out and say, oh, they got an 89.6%. And, so that's pretty cool, different ways of analyzing numbers. And it's not just the averages, they've got quite a few different options. You can find the maximum number, which, obviously in this data set of 3 numbers, 84 is the maximum, but if you have a data set of 500 numbers, finding the maximum there is not such an easy thing to do by eyeballing it. And so these data analysis tools are really, really useful. So there's a whole bunch of different mathematical analysis tools here. You can find standard deviation, all kinds of tests there. So if you're analyzing numbers like that, this is a really useful thing to look and see what kind of different options they have. And then one last thing, these are numbers that all add up to 100. And one interesting thing about this is that when you go to plot it, it'll automatically recognize that these numbers add up to 100% and just plot them on a little pie chart. So I just wanted to show this because it's just one of the other types of great graphs that they have available. And so Google Sheets, really a great tool. You can really help students with that, the Bloom's digital taxonomy analysis skill. They can really be looking at data and analyzing it in a way that they would not be able to with raw numbers, in a way that's faster than plotting data by hand and sometimes more reasonable. In a data set like this of the carbon dioxide concentrations, you can't really expect a student to spend some time sitting down with paper and plotting these points. That's a waste of your students' time, it's a waste of class time, and it's not practical. It's much easier to teach a student how to use a program like this, and it's a very useful life skill. Using Google Sheets is something that you can do over and over again in the sciences, has lots of useful applications. So this is a really great analysis tool for your students. Thanks for listening.